Progressives, this is your trigger warning. Supreme Court agrees to review whether Trump immune from prosecution in federal election interference case. Without immunity from criminal prosecution, the presidency as we know it will cease to exist. That's true. Now, that being said, let's see what MSNBC and these unhinged lunatics are reacting to it. Now let's hear that special kind of crazy from a Rachel Maddow reacting to the fact that the Supreme Court will just hear the case concerning Trump's immunity from prosecution. This is one of two things. Either she's mentally off balance, and that's being kind, or she knows she's lying. I'm not so sure. You make up your mind. Listen to this.
You think about the court as the Supreme Court of the United States and a rational actor and a decent one. That was a reasonable supposition, and it just turns out they're not that. Incremental bit of progress here. The important question here is not whether the Supreme Court is going to decide that Donald Trump and all presidents are immune from prosecution for things they commit, crimes they committed while they were president. I mean,
now, make sure you lefties out there and Democrats know that every single president could be brought to trial after they were president, including Barack Obama, who killed an American citizen 16 years old with a drone going after his father. Remember that. But this isn't about that. This is about Donald Trump only. They're willing to burn down the whole system just to get him. Let be it that if the court rules that presidents aren't immune for things they did during their presidency, the presidency will basically cease to exist.
It would be fully insane for them to actually side with Trump here, right? The conclusion that we can arrive at now based on what they have done without having to wait for the ruling is that they are ensuring that Trump will not face trial. And when they inevitably rule that presidents aren't immune from prosecution after they leave office, what that will tell Donald Trump, if by then he is president, is that he can never leave the office of the presidency.
Think about what she's saying. If he's immune from prosecution, he'll just be president for life. These people are nuts. Presidents aren't immune from being impeached and thrown out of office. If Trump was impeached, which he was twice, went on trial before the Senate, the way the founders set it up, because they know that in cases like today, when the current president unleashes his DOJ and all the district attorneys around the country after his political opponent, there has to be a check and a balance. You can't have one side just running over the other. That's what third world banana republics do. So the check and the balance, Miss Maddow, is impeachment, trial in the Senate, and if found guilty, then you can bring him up on charges through the regular channels, i.e. district attorneys and district courts. They're not letting him off loose because the founders knew that situations like this would happen, where the people that are in charge of this case, the Biden administration, would use all their power to go after their political enemies. This is the check and the balance, my dear, which you just don't understand.
Right. And if he is voted out in 2028, he cannot leave office, and he is willing to he is welcome to commit any crimes he wants to.
If he's voted out in 2028, he can't run again. And if he tries to run again while he's president in his second term, say the beginning of the fourth year of his second term, the Congress will impeach him for breaking the rules of the Constitution as written. He'll go before trial of the Senate and be found guilty and won't be allowed to run again. It's really that simple. There is a check and a balance. There isn't a ripshot like your side is doing now. It's amazing to me that these people are, this is mental illness.
As long as he is still president, in order to ignore the result of that election and stay in power for life, because otherwise he's going to go to prison when he gets out.
That's what they believe. These people are nuts. Nuts. Now let's listen to another lunatic from MSNBC, Chris Hayes. Now let's listen to another unhinged mainstream media talking head on the reaction to the Supreme Court just taking up the case on the immunity from prosecution from Trump. It's staggering to me.
Today, the right-wing dominated Supreme Court gave Donald Trump a gift. The biggest possible gift anyone could give him. The biggest possible gift they have given him yet. Remember, Donald Trump, of course, participated in a violent coup to overthrow democracy.
That's a lie. He wasn't brought up on charges for insurrection and overthrowing the government. He was impeached for that and found innocent. And you notice the picture they put with the noose hanging. To this day, no one knows who built that. No one knows who put it up. I have a sneaking suspicion who was responsible, at least indirectly, for it, but that's another issue for another time. And they'll keep showing this picture with the Capitol dome with the noose hanging down the entire time. This, folks, is propaganda. Propaganda.
First president to set himself squarely against the constitutional order in history. He rallied his supporters to storm the Capitol and steal an election he lost, and he was indicted by our Justice Department, representative of us, the people.
No, it wasn't representative of us, the people. The representative of us, the people, are the House of Representatives in the U.S. Senate. The DOJ is being run by the current president, Joe Biden, who is the political rival / enemy of President Trump. Let's be clear. The DOJ is not representing the average person. That's a lie. So that's lie number 2.
On 4 federal felony counts by a grand jury for his role in that insurrection. Well, today, in a single-page order released at 5 o'clock, the court agreed to consider Trump's manifestly weak claim that he is immune from prosecution for the January 6th insurrection because he was acting in some senses of in his official capacity as president.
He did nothing wrong as far as coup, insurrection. He was never, ever charged with that. In fact, to my knowledge, there is not one J6 prisoner that has been charged with insurrection. Not one. Why? Even the lunatic court in Washington, D.C. knows they can't prove that because it didn't happen.
But the order itself is not the story here. It's the timing. It all comes back to the timing. Let's remember. The court case, the trial of Donald Trump over his effort to subvert the constitutional republic, was originally set to begin days from now in March.
Yeah, the day before Super Tuesday. What a coincidence. These people are lunatics.
All that is on hold because the Supreme Court wants to hear oral arguments for Trump's immunity claims. Ready for this? 7 weeks from now.
7 weeks for a case of this magnitude is quick. Believe me, it is.
April 22nd, 2024, making it a real possibility, a likelihood, in fact, that Donald Trump will not face a trial for the crime of attempting to overthrow the American Republic, will not face a jury of his peers until after.
Oh, a jury of his peers? There's no jury of his peers in New York City. There's no jury of his peers with a bench trial for over $500 million fine to destroy the business he's built his entire life. There's no jury of his peers. That's a lie. There's no jury of his peers when he was indicted in Georgia. That's the entire point of the founders. They knew that they would bring up these charges on presidents after they were president in areas where they can get guaranteed an indictment and or a guilty verdict in a civil or criminal trial. That's why the House is the grand jury and the U.S. Senate is the jury to determine guilt or innocence, because they knew
after the next election in which he is the likely Republican candidate. I want to be crystal clear here about the import and significance of today's news, because I think a lot of the reporting has missed this. What happened today, this one-page order, looks anodyne, right? It is an unmistakable sign from the MAGA majority of the Trump-created court that they are with him, that they are going to use their power to make sure he does not face trial in an election year for
The reason why he's freaking out, the mega majority, is because he knows. He's been told maybe by people smarter than him, which wouldn't be hard. He knows that a president does have immunity after he's president. Anything he's done as president that's unlawful, you go before the U.S. House of Representatives, like I said, you're indicted / impeached, and you're put on trial in the Senate. Because the founders knew that there would be juries, there would be grand juries, and there would be judges that would go after a president after they were president that were political enemies or somebody that hated them. That's the check and the balance. And he knows that Trump did not commit a coup. And all of his legal people on MSNBC had probably told him off camera that's the case.
attempting to end American democracy. Until today, it could have gone either way. It was genuinely unclear whether they were going to give him what he wanted, whether they were going to put their shoulder to the wheel on Donald Trump's behalf. Everyone has always understood the substance of his legal claim here is meritless. It lost to the district court level. It lost unanimously in the appellate court. 3 judges, one of whom is a Republican appointee. It is bad law under the Supreme Court's own precedent and jurisprudence. The point was never to win on the merits. The point was to make a time-consuming Hail Mary pass to attempt to escape accountability. Trump's bet.
What's happening now is he's freaking out because their election interference tactic is not working as much as they would like. And they see President Trump going up slowly in the polls. The more he's indicted, the more he's charged, his numbers still go up. The only time it goes down if he's found guilty of a crime. And that's a very tiny amount. Their strategy isn't working. In the system, I pray, that with the Supreme Court looking at the case, is the check and balance the founders put in. The founders knew one simple thing that still holds true today. People are people are people, whether it's the 1800s or whether it's 2024. People suck, and they will do things to destroy their enemies at any cost.
Was that the 6-3 MAGA majority he himself created on that court would bail him out?
Another lie. He didn't create that. He appointed the justice. And it was gone through the process, especially Kavanaugh. I felt bad for the guy, the crap he went through and his family. It went through the Senate approval committees and voted on by the Senate, which is the people. The people said yes. He doesn't like that. Oh, well.
That they would rob the People's Department of Justice the opportunity to present all the evidence of his guilt. That the voters of this country, you and I, the hundreds of millions of us, might be robbed of the information we need to determine whether the man is guilty of the gravest crime any politician has been accused of since the Civil War.
That's also a lie. The people weren't robbed of anything. Their representatives in 2 impeachments and 2 trials said not guilty. Period. You want your hand-picked juries. You want your hand-picked grand jury members to do your bidding for a small percent of people that think like you. That's not the American people.
Today, the court signaled they are in cahoots, that the plot is on. It's a go. Yes, they will take up the case when they get to it. They have scheduled it 7 weeks now. But keep in mind how this works. Trump's legal team encouraging and anticipating precisely this kind of delay tactic. Let's go back. On December 1st.
What he's mad about is the fact that by then, President Trump, by April, will breeze through Super Tuesday at March 5th and we have enough delegates to become the Republican nominee for president without any guilty verdicts or trials prior to that. Their plan isn't working. It's not working. The people's representatives in the DOJ, that's a lie. The DOJ, for all intents and purposes, and the FBI is representing the current administration, whoever is the administration, and the enemies of Donald Trump and Republicans.
First, 89 days ago, federal judge Tanya Chutkan ruled on Trump's bogus immunity claim, finding it correctly meritless. Days later, on December 11th, special prosecutor Jack Smith, anticipating that this claim was no more than an attempt to delay and would fail on the merits, did something unusual. He did something audacious. He went straight to the Supreme Court, skipping an intermediate appellate level, and he said, look, let's be clear here. You know and I know what's going on here. Trump's trying to delay. This is likely to land in your lap. If you're inclined to take it, let's do it now. Let's get to the merits. So the public interest in this case coming to trial can be preserved. And the court said no. Just before Christmas said no. Now, people said at the time, well, maybe that makes sense because maybe Supreme Court justices want to let the lower appellate court, their colleagues in the D.C. Circuit, weigh in and not even take up the case because it's so clear-cut. And then what happened? The appellate court did take up the case. They heard oral arguments. They got briefed. They took a while. The clock was ticking the whole time, as we said on this show and over and over and over. And then on February...
Well, it's funny. When the D.C. Circuit Court ruled like he liked, them taking their time was okay. You see the hypocrisy here.
6, they came out with a unanimous decision against Trump. He is Citizen Trump. He is not above the law. The decision seemed carefully tailored to give the Supreme Court an easy choice to simply refuse to take up the case, to let the lower court ruling stand. But if the Supreme Court wanted to take up the case and wanted to do it in an expedited fashion, and let's be clear, when I say the Supreme Court, the conservative majority of the court is what we're talking about here, they could have done it the day after they got the petition this month.
You think the entire world revolves around your BS, that the Supreme Court should drop everything they're doing, especially in the case of this importance, and just take it up immediately. That's not the way it works. And believe me, if it was reverse, and they were after Joe Biden of the Supreme Court, you would be screaming to high heaven unfairness.
That day. What did they do? No. They burned 2.5 weeks for no reason. They weren't producing any paper. They weren't writing any dissents or arguments.
Oh, they were just sitting around playing video games, right? For 2.5 weeks, they didn't have... You don't think they talk amongst themselves? You don't think that they have their interns go through case law to try to build a case which way you want to rule? You think 2.5 weeks? Is it? They did absolutely nothing but sit around, like I said, and play video games? It's amazing to me. They had nothing to do. Believe me, the Supreme Court docket is jammed up. And by the way, FYI, it doesn't take a majority of justices to hear a case. It doesn't take 5 or more. It only takes 4. If 4 justices say a case is worth reviewing and looking at, then it does. They weren't doing exactly the way we wanted them to do it, so they suck. Well, you know what? You suck.
It's 1 page. There it is. They sat around for 2 weeks, and then they issued just 1-page order today saying they were going to take this up. They were going to schedule arguments for 7 weeks from now. That is considerably longer than the expedited review of the 14th Amendment case against Trump in Colorado. The one where he's challenging his right to be on the ballot, right?
Why was that done quicker than this case? It was because the primary was coming up ASAP, and a ruling had to be made before the primary. And by the way, keeping him off the ballot in a state doesn't work because the Republicans in that state will just have a caucus. So it works out the same. This is about getting Trump, and it's not working out like you had planned. Oh, well.
Now, in that case, where what loomed over everyone was Donald Trump not being on the ballot, the Supreme Court wanted to expedite quickly. Right? They wanted to get that one done.
Why? Because the primary was coming up, you idiot. And for your French speakers out there, idiot.
That ruling is going to come out before Colorado's primary next Tuesday. They move quickly there. But here, what the MAGA majority is telling us with this audacious order today is that the fix is in. In some ways, for what it represents about the court, I think it's 100 times worse than Bush v. Gore.
You have the balls to say the fix is in after that ridiculous civil trial in New York, after the indictments in Georgia and Washington, D.C., and other places? You have the balls and the nerve to say the fix is in? It's okay if the fix is in as long as it's on your side. There is no fix. There isn't.
It doesn't matter really what they rule on the merits. They all know that. We all know that. Everyone knows the score here. No one should be under any illusions that any player in this drama is confused about what is happening and has happened.
They think that the Supreme Court will rule in Trump's favor for immunity. Why? Because that's the way it should be. And ruling against a ex-president for things he did as president without going through the impeachment and the trial in the Senate will take the presidency and trash it. And trash it. And the president in the future presidents will just be a puppet of whoever is in charge. It will not be a separate branch of government as the founders intended. It's really close to a parliamentary government, which the founders rejected. The president will just be a mouthpiece, be a ceremonial person, very much like the Queen and King of England, without a lot of power. Some, but not much.
Delay is all that matters. The pacing is all that matters. No one needs to wonder anymore whether this right-wing court will audaciously, flagrantly, in front of the whole nation, use their power to run the clock out so that Donald Trump faces no legal accountability, so that his guilt or innocence cannot be definitively proven to us, the voters.
He was found innocent twice by the U.S. Senate. Twice already. It's funny he doesn't mention that.
Who I believe have a right to know whether the man is guilty or innocent, so that he can return to power without us having that knowledge and dismiss these cases from his position as, and I quote him here, dictator on day one.
Yeah, I saw that video, and you should watch it too. He says, I'll be dictator on the first day only and do this, this, and this. It was a joke. Sometimes Trump says things out of school. You got to watch the video in order to understand. That's a lie. He's not going to be a dictator. No president can. Well, except maybe for Biden, he seems to do things whenever he wants to, just take away laws whenever he wants to, goes against the Supreme Court on the college tuition funding. He doesn't care what the Supreme Court says. You don't get any criticism from him.
If you were hoping that Donald Trump's authoritarian disregard for the rule of law was going to be stopped by Americans' institutions and the court at the highest level, that hope is severely diminished today.
There you have it. Justice delayed. My butt. Justice delayed. You don't like the way this is turning out. And you don't like the fact that President Trump is going to be the Republican nominee for President of the United States. It's not an accident that the trial was going to start the day before Super Tuesday. It's not an accident that Mar-a-Lago was raided by the FBI and the DOJ 61 days before an election, when their rule is we don't do things that affect politics 60 days before an election. So they did it the 61st day, just like Trump's trial was going to start the day before Super Tuesday. This has all been planned out to do the most possible damage to his candidacy and him and his life and his business and his family. Period. So they're looking at it in April, and by then Trump will have the nomination, which was their goal, is to have Trump thrown out before that, so people like Nikki Haley can get the nomination. And the Republicans will pick someone else. They counted on the Republican Party and the Republican voters in the country, which their voice you could care less about, would be gone. And you get to pick who you want for your opponent, in this case, a Republican. Well, the people made their choice. The Republicans in these primaries are making their choice, and you don't like it. Oh, well, kiss my ass. And until next time, God bless, goodbye, and good luck.